The Radleys by Matt Haig is a vampire novel. I saw this at the thrift shop, decided to grab it because, you know, I really enjoyed the humans. And the Radleys is a vampire book. Basically, the Radley family are a sort of middle-class British family of vampires, except that the children don't know they're vampires. Peter is the father. He is the patriarch of the family. He is a doctor. So he's got, you know, the respect of the community in the small town. His wife, Helen, she doesn't work or anything, but she's, you know, a very worrywart of sorts. And, you know, they keep delaying telling the children that they are also vampires. And because the children don't know, they have to lie to the children to, you know, sort of keep them in check. So Rowan is the older of the two children. He is 17, awkward. He always slurs his speech because he's always tired, because he's hanging out in the sunlight. You know, he's very pale. He is always tired, nauseous, continually, you know, he likes poetry. So he's treated really badly by the bullies at school because, you know, when they're all running around doing, you know, football, he's just kind of like running around like, oh, you know, I can barely do physical activity. So obviously he is a, you know, choice target for the larger, more masculine jock bullies. And then 15-year-old Clara is wants to be vegan because, you know, that's what she's about. But she's also you know, has to wear glasses, very pale and sickly and awkward. And she has a very attractive friend named Eve, and you know, they make an odd pair. But something goes terribly wrong during a party, and because Clara is doing vegan diet, it causes her to go haywire, and she commits an atrocious act against someone else, and it's up to her family to cover up the, you know, violent act. And it involves getting Peter's brother Will in, and Will is like a rocker, sort of hedonism inspired rocker kind of man, ex-professor who likes to drink the blood of vampires, so it gives him a bit of a physical edge in terms of powers, and he shows up and decides to be the wrecking ball into their nice quiet life. So overall, the book is really like short. I blew through this book in like 2.5 days. Each chapter is really short. It's like, you know, it's very similar to the humans, you know, it's just like 1 page, 2 pages per chapter, really. It's almost like a series of small tidbits. And interspersed are the pages of the Abstainer's Guide, because Peter and the Radleys, they decided to follow the rules of the Abstainers. They don't live as long as other vampires, and they're always sickly, and they're always, you know, disadvantaged because they don't, you know, imbibe in blood. So, you know, it sort of affects their physical and sometimes their social standing. It explores, you know, that like, they always hire a gardener because they don't want to go out in the sun, and people think that's weird. You know, why do they hire a gardener for their small, tiny garden? Or, you know, how come they never want to go to the beach or, you know, golfing? And the book doesn't really explore any of the more juicy things it could have, like Clara's puberty, you know, the sort of dark edge that we get to explore. There's a lot of world building that I really liked. They explored the vampire societies in there. There's a lot of lame, what's it called, references to real life people being vampires. It's a lazy way of world building. It's like saying, oh, you know, example, Hitler was a vampire, you know, and he actually liked to drink blood, you know, it'd be like that, you know, and then it doesn't really affect the plot, and you can just be like, or, you know, this famous singer was also a vampire, and he did a vampire version of a famous song, you know, Thriller was a comedy, you know, something like that. There's a lot of references to songs that have vampire versions that regular civilians would not know about. But the rest of the world building is really dark too, because the sort of police there's a small section of them that know about the vampires, but they let it happen because they get rid of, as long as you get rid of the undesirables of society. So if you go after streetwalkers and drug addicts and violent criminals, it's okay, you know, homeless people, old people. I don't know about old people actually, that just threw that in there. But I'm assuming if, you know, if there was an old person who lived alone and they disappeared, the police might not care. And the book doesn't really explore the more, you know, those sort of aspects of the book. It's more focused on the sort of covering up Clara's, you know, outburst basically. And They do throw a couple of wrenches in the end there. There's a lot of plot twists and things like that. But I felt the ending was really atrocious. Like, honestly, one of the worst endings you could ever get. It wraps up everything really tightly, too neatly. And there's just that thing that happens at the end that I just felt kind of threw everything under the bus. And, you know, I really detested the ending because it just felt a little too easy. And, you know, that's okay. You know, not every ending can hit the landing. You know, I almost hated Let the Right One In, but then, you know, something happened and it became one of the best vampire stories of all time. But the Radleys, you know, I enjoyed the ride. You know, it's a quick, short read, you know, 2-3 page chapters, good characterization, good world building. The story's okay. You know, it's not particularly super amazing. I just felt like it could have like been a little bit bolder, you know. Instead, they sort of pigeonhole it into one specific plot line, and then it just ends abruptly, and it keeps going after. So overall, The Radleys is a really interesting book. It's a little dated. It came out in 2010 when the vampire craze was like sweeping the nation. I believe the Twilight books came out around that time. So overall, if you're interested in that, just a quick, simple vampire fix, it's not bad, but definitely not in the same league as the humans, for sure. And but I will check out any other you know, fiction stories by Matt Haig. Here he's got a new one called The Midnight Library that sounds really good. And yeah, so if I had to give this book a rating, I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5.